For those of you who don't know, this event was inspired by Dr. Lucy Hobbs, the first American woman to earn a degree in dentistry. For many years, she was denied admission because she was a woman, but she persisted and was finally admitted to the Ohio College of Dental Surgery. Lucy Hobbs was a true trailblazer who paved the way for women's success. So this event is a celebration of all of us. Today's topic is something that has affected all of us on some level. Opioid addiction has no prejudice and it can affect anyone. People who suffer from this addiction have a bad disease, but they are not bad people. Today we are going to hear from 3 speakers and how this disease has affected them. Our first guest speaker is Dr. Sharon Parsons. Dr. Parsons was recently named the recipient of the Lucy Hobbs Humanitarian Award. An advocate for opiate awareness, she educates dental professionals and has been interviewed by CBS Sunday Morning on the topic. After her son died of an opiate overdose in 2015, Dr. Parsons began addressing the scourge of addiction, speaking at the sentencing hearing for the man who sold her son the drug that killed him. As chairperson of the East Main Street Special Improvement District, she leads the nonprofit corporation in its efforts to improve the neighborhood and business district east of Bexley. In October 2019, Dr. Parsons will be inducted as the president of the Ohio Dental Association, only the 3rd woman elected to the position. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Sharon Parsons.
I want to introduce you to someone. Once I get past this, I'm okay. So this is Sean Herman. Sean was very bright. He was funny, had a wicked sense of humor, not innocent by any means. I don't want to paint him that way. He would, sneak beer, sneak pot, do all those things that boys do. In his junior year, he called me and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to go ride dirt bikes with my friend." And just wanted to let me know what he was doing. And I said, "Sean, that's a dumb thing. Don't do that. You're going to fall. You're going to hurt yourself. You're not going to be able to take finals." But being a boy, he did it anyway. And he, just like I said, he fell, he hurt himself, but he didn't want me to know. So he didn't go to the emergency room. He didn't go to urgent care. He was living by, off campus, and a guy in the house next to him handed him 4 pills. And that was the start of a very long, very horrible journey. So the adolescent brain, major growth occurs in your prefrontal cortex between the ages of 13 and 26. And in that tender age, if you are exposed to an opioid, you are 5 times more likely to become addicted than any other age group. Of all the people with addiction, 96.5% started substance use before the age of 21. And genetics count for 40 to 70% of the risk. I can't look at someone and say, you know what, he'll be okay. I don't think she will be. I'm not that good. And I highly doubt that any of you are. Here's, I think, the really important part as far as I'm concerned. We never learned about addiction. I knew nothing about addiction. When my son became addicted, the first thing I noticed was, he just seemed a little bit off, maybe half a beat behind. And I would ask him, well, what's wrong? I was studying a lot last night. I'm really tired, or I haven't been sleeping well. There was always an excuse. As you learn about the disease of addiction, unfortunately, some of the things that go along with it are, they become excellent at lying, manipulating. They're very convincing. And especially as a parent, you want to believe your child. So it took a while. And he got worse, and he got worse. And finally, I pinned him down, and he admitted that he was addicted to OxyContin. He was very embarrassed about it. I mean, we have 172 people a day in this country die. That's like a plane crashing every day. And people say, oh, it's terrible about the crisis. But if we had that many planes go down in a year, you can bet that people would be up in arms. So, you know, it's important that we talk about this and that we help erase the stigma. But am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And I think for a very long time, we were part of the problem. I don't think we meant to be. I think unwittingly we were. But I think it's important that we realize that we are and that we become part of the solution. So progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. Someone who is going through addiction, and a lot of times they get better, and then they get worse, and then they get better, and then they get worse. And you know, it's kind of a cycle. It's a very hard thing. I mean, I like I said, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. My son did not want to be addicted. I don't know anybody who wants to be addicted. It's not a fun existence. It's not a fun existence for the loved ones, that I finally had to kick him out of my house and do the tough love thing, which goes against all of your maternal instincts. I mean, you just don't want to throw your kids out to the wind. But I was afraid that I was enabling and not helping. And I begged him not to, and he did it anyway. Oh, Mom, just one last night. Well, I was awakened at 4 a.m. by the police knocking on my door, informing me that my son had died of a drug overdose. And I didn't want to call my mom at 4 a.m. I didn't want to wake her with that. So I waited until about 6 when I knew she was up. And I called her, and she came over to be with me. And 2 hours after she got to my house, she collapsed in my kitchen and died. So you never know what damage has happened to a family. From one person, from 4 pills, my family was devastated. I hope you'll remember this, and I hope that before you prescribe to someone in this age group, you will think about it and think about, you know, the devastation that it could cause, because you never know whether or not that person is someone susceptible to addiction.
Our second speaker is Jen Settlemeyer. Jen will share her personal story about her addiction and her recovery process. Today, Jen is over 5 years sober and works at the Ohio Addiction Recovery Center. Her mission is to connect addicts and non-addicts by writing, speaking, and serving the community in an effort to create understanding and support. Jen believes knowledge is power and the biggest step to tackling this epidemic. Please give a warm welcome to Jen.
And I really believe that. And I thank Dr. Parsons for her story. One of 5 kids, I'm right in the middle, 3 brothers, 1 sister, because I want to let you know that none of that disqualified me from becoming an addict. None of those wonderful things, none of those wonderful people that I have in my life, that didn't mean that I wasn't susceptible to this as well. But to me, I just always felt different. I was always trying to fit in. I never felt good enough. You'll hear most addicts say that. I never felt normal. Once I started doing opiates, that took all that away from me. And I was immediately, that instant gratification that us addicts like, that hit me. Jackson lived through a lot of my addiction, seeing me, probably not understanding at first. Once I started doing heroin, he could definitely notice something was different. He was about 5 or 6 years old when I started using heroin. And you'll hear addicts talk about their bottom when they talk about recovery. And I like to tell people that my bottom was not getting arrested or CPS knocking on my door and dragging my son out the door. His father went ahead and did that for me, which he should have. But those weren't my bottoms, those major things, being thrown in jail, those things weren't my bottom. My bottom was when I stopped reading to him at night, and when I stopped going to his parent-teacher conferences, when I stopped taking him to the park, unless it was for me to shoot up while he was on the slide. My bottom was when I stopped cutting the crust off of his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I say that because addiction takes you somewhere you never want to be. The one thing that I had going for me was I was a good mom, and it took that away from me. It turned me into somebody I was not. And the interventionist told them to love me from afar, that I was not the same person that I was previously, and basically to plan my funeral. It is not fun. It is definitely not, oh my God, I'm high, this feels wonderful. It is survival mode. My husband likes to say it's a 25-hour, 8-day-a-week job, and it is. That's why a lot of heroin addicts don't work, because it is excruciating. I left him for 9 months. I don't know his first grade teacher because I was in treatment his whole first grade year. My husband soon followed, and he came down to treatment. He was a 13-year heroin user, and he has over 4 years of recovery. So we do this deal together. You said that addicts aren't bad people, they're sick people. And I guarantee every prostitute down Parsons Avenue and every crime you hear about on the news is an addict desperately, desperately trying to get the drug, because you are so sick without it. Physically sick. You are tormented without it. Enablers, that was another thing I wanted to touch on. Yes, moms are the biggest enablers. And I will tell you that when my mom stopped answering the phone was when something changed for me. One by one, they were listening to the interventionist, and my mom was the last one. And I remember when she wouldn't answer the phone, and I remember I'm not a physically violent person, but I am a verbally violent person when I'm using. And I cannot even imagine the voicemails I left her for not answering the phone. But it is what saved my life. They had to put a stop to it, and they did. It takes every ounce of love and care out of you. You're the most selfish person because you don't know any other way. It's a very deep, dark place to be in. Obviously, we have consequences for our actions, and sometimes it's tricky to get there. But once you know, and once you speak to an addict in recovery, it's the most powerful thing ever. We have a lot to say. We really do.
Our last speaker is Rachel Bertner. Rachel teaches healing-centered yoga to special populations experiencing multiple forms of trauma. Her practices and teaching combines body healing arts with yoga, movement, and meditation to help individuals who have experienced trauma reclaim a positive sensory experience with their body. Rachel studied addiction therapy at The Ohio State University and is currently a trauma-informed yoga teacher in Columbus, Ohio. She is a trauma educator and inspirational speaker on how she found her own success in alternative recovery by practicing yoga for healing. Please welcome Rachel Bertner.
Here's the beautiful thing about addicts in recovery. They're going through a very selfish process. I know because I've been through it. I can't care about anybody else's feelings when I'm going through that because I'm stuck in a reality that I have to get out of first before I can even consider how I'm affecting other people's reality. But if you have somebody that comes into a room currently and they're anxious and they want the drug, usually we give somebody the drug so they stop being anxious. Your dentist office can become a safe and trusted environment, and you all can be a safe and trusted person. You all have the opportunity to inspire somebody to feel really good about themselves when maybe that hasn't happened, especially in a role where y'all are all authority. What can we do? Heal. What you can do is you can heal yourself, and you can make sure that you know your reality. The opposite of pain is not high. And I have no idea what happened in this culture that the opposite of pain, once you get put in pain, we're taught that the opposite is high. Know what you feel like when you go into these situations. If you're going to be told that people might be manipulating you or drug seeking or this kind of stuff. And you also are in Ohio. I don't know if you saw the slide. Ohio is one of the highest populations of opiate addiction. We're all having a hard time with all of this. Okay, we're addicted culture. And so the thing that for me, I just also want to step in as somebody who helps the helpers. Please take care of yourselves. And yes, educate yourselves about it, but also then be honest that when you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that you have your own practices. So please take care of yourselves. And yes, as you educate yourselves and you hear these difficult things, if it's difficult to hear, do something to make yourself feel better. Ask for support. It doesn't make you weak either.
So for the raffle, we have raised $700 tonight for A Voice for Sean. I wanted to match what we raised, so we're going to be donating $1,400 to your foundation. And I've always wanted to carry a big check, so this is exciting.
I always wanted to get a big check.